how effective was or productive was practice today when you go over some details like you did?
Well, we hope the reps in practice and clarifying areas where we think we can get better, some details that we've gotten away from that have helped us had success as far as defending is concerned. These are things that we're trying to bring answers and solutions to the table to try to help the guys. And we worked on some stuff today. We watched it in the film room before we went out there, so they got a visual. And then we went out and we try to give them some reps in certain scenarios that where they get a chance to feel it. So they see it in the film room, and then they go out and they get a chance to feel it actually with the reps we put them through. So we did some of that today. We're hoping that's going to help them do it.
It looked like most of the reps, Susan wasn't, skating in a normal D pair. I'm wondering, does that have anything to do with one of the goals in the last game where it looked like he got banged up, or are there other reasons for that?
A little bit of both. We're just trying to mix guys in to give them reps, and that's part of it.
Gabe looked like he's back next to Mika. Just what did you think about his first stint in November on that line, and what has he shown you in the last few games that you know him there?
So I thought early on, I told you guys this, I felt like he was a little bit overwhelmed, and that's not that's no one's fault. That's just part of the development process and where he was at the time. And from my experience in coaching young players like Gabe over the years, their learning curves tend to be steep. And everybody's a little bit different in that regard, and we just try to watch and figure out where we think they're at. And what I try to answer through this process and the conversations we have with our coaching staff is, I don't think it's in any player's best interest to get overwhelmed when they get on the ice by, the level of play, the strength of competition, size and strength and speed, things of that nature, right? That young players are constantly trying to adjust, to adapt, to establish themselves as NHL players. And so, they're all going to be challenged. That's part of it. But, and we're fine with players being challenged. What I try to figure out is, okay, where's the line where that player starts to become overwhelmed? Because I don't think that's in the player's best interest, nor is it in the team's best interest. Confidence erodes, trust erodes, things like that. So we try to watch for that, and if we think a player is, we're putting him in and he's over his head a bit, we don't think that's in his best overall interest is from a development standpoint in the short term or the big picture. So that's just part of the process. I think most recently, I think he's, and experiential learning is the best teacher. You put the players in through the game environment, and some figure it out faster and quicker than others, and some don't. And so, the one thing that I've always felt with Gabe is that maybe his biggest asset is his brain, his hockey IQ. He's a really smart hockey player. He sees it really well. He's got a good stick. He can make plays. The quickness of the game, the size and speed of the players, things like that. That's going to be one of the challenges that he needs to adjust to. But, given time and experience, we believe he will. It's just a matter of, when. So, depending on who our opponent is, what potential matchups look like, where we think Gabe's game is at the particular time. There's a lot that's involved, but that's kind of the criteria that I have in my own head when I'm watching these young players.
You said it doesn't matter road or home, but is it easier to play a simpler game on the road?
It can be. I think the biggest challenge we have at home right now, and I'm sure I'm stating the obvious, is we haven't had the success that we've hoped to have at home, and that weighs on everybody, and it's heavy. And so when you go on the road, you don't have that.
Obviously, Mika and JT are back together now. Just how did you assess their game when they were together early on in the season?
Well, we didn't think it was working. That's why we broke it up. To be quite honest with you, we didn't think that they were having success, and that was one of the reasons why we made the adjustment the way we did. And I thought when we put JT and Troach together, I thought that their game was building. They were starting to develop some chemistry. Then JT got hurt, and then when I put Mika with Brett, we felt like that pair was driving offense, regardless of who we had on the opposite side with them. And so that's why we made the switch then, and and we made the switch most recently for the same reasons.
JT and Braden were saying that they were hoping that if the guys develop confidence today through the drills that you guys are doing, it could translate to tomorrow and potentially the road trip. From your experience as a coach, can a day like today, can the confidence from a day like today, can it translate into game situations?
Yes, I think this is where you build confidence. You build confidence through preparation. We use the phrase sweat equity. When you put the work in, you pay attention to details, and you put the work in, you feel good about your respective game and the overall team game. And I think when you get in circumstances like this, and when our confidence isn't at an all-time high, that we've got to work our way out of it through sweat equity, and we're gonna try to prepare, and that should help everybody's overall confidence that they're more prepared for the next game in front of them.
I guess the biggest concern for you is just getting back to that structure defensively that you had through the beginning of the season and the middle of the season and now.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things, but without a doubt, it has to start there for me. I think when you look at the first 15 or 20 games or so, that I thought at least from a defensive standpoint, this team was playing with a lot of structure, and we were pretty stingy to play against, and all of our analytic underlying numbers suggested that. And so, we've gotten away from that a little bit. We've lost our swagger a little bit. I do think that the mindset of the group is there's a connection there. I think when players are in the right headspace and they're playing an instinctive game and they trust in their own game and the players around them, then I think it's easier to it seems to translate to the overall team game. And when it's a struggle, confidence gets rattled, and the game doesn't become as instinctive. So everyone seems to be in a reactive mindset as opposed to a proactive mindset. I think what we've lost on the defensive side is, and this is something we've talked about the last week or so, is defensive anticipation. Arriving when the puck, anticipating where the puck's going, arriving there when when you arrive when the puck arrives, your ability to kill it and win the puck is much greater. We're reactive as opposed to being proactive. We've lost our defensive anticipation that gives us the opportunity to kill plays, own the quadrants, win puck with numbers. And that was a strength of this group for a long period of time. And I think some of the circumstances surrounding the team most recently have been part of that. I do think it's connected. So that's one of our challenges is we've got to work through that. So that was some of the stuff that we were doing out there today.